Hey, with our last segment of monopolies, we're going to get into our fifth one here. It's been quite a focus on monopolies. We need to talk about the overall philosophy of monopolies in America because as Americans, we seem to have this hatred of monopolies, and I'm not sure where that comes from, except maybe in our history books it talks about how there were monopolists that were, hurting people in the 1800s, I think is where that chapter is in your history books. And it's talking about those company towns that I mentioned earlier, those geographic monopolies. And yeah, there were some abuses that went on there. And so, in response, what the government did is it passed legislation like this to try and limit those kind of things. So, one of the first acts that came along was the Clayton Antitrust Act. Okay? The Clayton Antitrust Act said that you can't organize for the purpose of setting prices. Well, that was kind of a failure of a law because what happened is immediately the businesses went and said, oh, well, then people can't unionize because that'll cost us more. And that's how it was applied. And so it actually did the opposite of what it was supposed to do. It was supposed to help workers. In fact, it actually hurt workers. And so quickly Congress had to pass the Sherman Antitrust Act, and the idea here was that businesses could not combine in such a way as to regulate the prices in a market so much that they had dominant control over them. Okay? It gets a little strange, but let's take a look there. There's two types of monopolies, and it distinguishes between them. First of all, you have the vertical monopoly. So if there is a product, you're going to own that production of that product from start to finish. Okay? So if you're a furniture maker and you have a vertical monopoly, then you will own the trees, the lumber. You will cut them down and put them on your company trucks. It will go to your company mill where you will put it on more of your company trucks and take it to the furniture maker, and that's your company too, and you will make furniture and sell it out the door at your company. This is a vertical monopoly because they own the whole process of the product from start to finish. And what the Sherman Antitrust Act said is that this is legal because you don't own the market to set prices. You own the production of a product, but there could be, besides your company, there could be another company or another company, companies 2 or 3 or 4, whatever, that can also do the same thing you're doing. You're not shutting them out of the market. They can go buy their own trees, have their own trucks, mill, furniture, whatever. So there can be multiple furniture stores owning their own whole production line, and that's totally fine. So this type of monopoly, a vertical monopoly, is okay. What it distinguished is that a horizontal monopoly is something that was not going to be allowed. So if you owned all the mills in a given region, well, then you can set the prices. The furniture makers have to sell their trees to you to mill to get back for their furniture, and you just say, well, I'm just going to double the price. Or I'm not going to help you, but I'll help you. So you had some discriminatory practices, you had some price gouging going on, and so the Sherman Antitrust Act really fixed this type of organizational structure. So as the theme of this chapter has been market structures matter. How do you set up the proper structure? And it turns out that vertical is okay. Horizontal monopolies are not okay because then you're setting the price and people can't substitute, especially in a given region. Okay? So horizontal monopolies versus vertical monopolies. There was one company known as Standard Oil. It had both a vertical monopoly and a horizontal monopoly. It was the oil company. Because what happened there is that economies of scale took over. They got bigger and bigger. They made their oil cheaper and cheaper. And so they basically drove all their competitors out of the market. Well, all their competitors were like, this isn't fair. But the consumer wasn't so concerned because in order to maintain that monopoly, Standard Oil had to keep that price really low. So the consumers were quite happy with it. It was the other producers that didn't like it. And they went to Congress and said, stop this. So what Congress did is it broke Standard Oil up into a bunch of smaller companies. The leftover from Standard Oil, the main one is Exxon, but Texaco, Chevron, Arco, all these different companies came out of that. and have been competing ever since, but slowly merging together because as they get bigger, they get cheaper. And so we're going right back towards Standard Oil. So it might very well be that oil might be like a utility. It might actually be a natural monopoly. We'll have to do some more research and find out. But yeah, economists are working on that to see. All right? So what's with the love-hate and mostly hate relationship with monopolies in America? Because take a look at all the government monopolies here. Most of our monopolies are government monopolies. We have tons of monopolies. In fact, we have all kinds, good, bad, and ugly, mixed in here. We seem to tolerate all these monopolies here, but then we vent our anger on, oh, Standard Oil was bad, you know? So it seems to be a little strange. I don't know if that's a history take on it, or that's just part of the nature of humanity, but yeah, you know, you look at some of these monopolies we have, and some of these you're satisfied with, and some of these you're not satisfied with, okay? But you understand they are monopolies, and they could change and be something different. If you change the structure, you might also change the outcome. Remember, incentives matter. All right? So think about, do these have to be monopolies? Are they good being monopolies? Should they be monopolies? Those are some of the questions that we as a society need to ask. Finally, we come to the Interstate Commerce Commission. And that's a curious one because they're the ones that get to look at, you know, this business wants to combine with that business, and we're going to allow a merger or not. Yeah. So on the good side, Interstate Commerce Commission looks at these different types of mergers and tries to measure, economists will actually measure this, how much market power they will have and how much price setting market power they will have. So especially with oligopolies, you know, there's a few firms and they're merging more and more, coming towards a monopoly. The ICC might say, hey, we're not going to allow that. We're not going to allow you to merge because that would take away any competition and any choice of the consumer. So on the good side, that's what they are. They're the judges of that. On the bad side, how many of you actually have heard of the ICC until now and reading the chapter? Probably none of you. So if you're a really big business, you know, like say Disney, you know, huge, and you want to merge with someone like ABC, the American Broadcasting Corporation, you probably have a couple $2 billion that you could throw to the ICC and just sort of say, hey, make this happen. Okay? So on the bad side, this formation of such a system that's not really publicly put out there every time they make a decision is just ripe for any kind of backroom dealing. Okay? So that's the good side of the ICC, that's the bad side of the ICC. If this was to be a little more public, you know, everyone in the country had to approve a merger of some grand scale before it could be approved, and you put out public notices like this is what will happen, this is the amount of market power, you know, will it be a little or will it be a lot to change prices? The American people might want to think about voting on those kind of things, as opposed to having a small regulatory board which you've never heard of. Okay? So yeah, we have this sort of strange relationship with monopolies. We tend to have some kind of anger towards the business monopolies, and we somehow accept, without even thinking, most government monopolies. So hopefully this gives you a little better perspective on monopolies, the good, the bad, and the ugly about them, because they're all over the place. And we as voters and as business owners and as consumers and as producers, we need to make choices. Hopefully they can be the best choices. All right? See you in class.